This was the scene last night as hundreds of mostly young white men waving tiki torches marched on the grounds of the University of Virginia in Charlottesville. They chanted slogans like "Jew will not replace us," true story, and "White Lives Matter," along with the known Nazi phrase "blood and soil." The march ended in skirmishes with counter-protesters, and no one was seriously injured. And today, white nationalist so-called alt-right groups are expected to gather in Charlottesville again for a Unite the Right rally, with the stated goal of saving a statue of Confederate General Robert E. Lee. And joining me now is the Reverend Tracy Blackman of the United Church of Christ. Reverend Blackman, thank you so much for being here. Now, I know you were inside of a church last night when these white nationalist marchers began converging on that church at the University of Virginia campus. I want to play for you a little bit of sound of what they did last night, and then I want you to describe for us what you saw. So let's listen to that a little bit. Now, for those who can't really understand what they're saying blood and soil, which happens to have been the slogan of the Nazi Party's Department of Agriculture in 1930s Germany. The actual Nazis of Germany, that was their agricultural department slogan. Tell me your impressions being inside that church last night.
Well, thank you for having me on, Joy. The service last night was intended to be a moment of motivation, a moment of prayer, and a moment of encouragement for people who wanted to provide a faithful witness of love, anticipating today's march. The schedule for the Nazi and the fascist example was supposed to be today and not last night. So we gathered in a standing room only, maximum capacity crowd to give a word of encouragement. I was invited in to give a speech to that regard. And as we were closing down, I gotta go.
Oh my goodness, I don't know what is happening here. I don't know what just happened there with our guest. But we're going to try to find out what happened. And she was standing at the location where it looks like now violence has broken out among the crowd. And for those who are unfamiliar with what's going on today in Charlottesville, we want to make sure that our producers check on Reverend Blackman and make sure that she's okay. If somebody could please text her. There's a rally that's being held. It's supposed to happen at Emancipation Park, which used to be Robert E. Lee Park, and it's home to a statue of the Confederate General Robert E. Lee in Charlottesville. The statue was slated to be removed. There was a vote of the city council there. The vice mayor of Charlottesville is black and is the only black member of city leadership, and was seen as the person who spearheaded the removal of that statue, even though it was really activists in Charlottesville that wanted it removed. There was a vote, a very narrow vote, to remove the statue. Today was supposed to be a Unite the Right, quote, rally in defense of the statue. There have been court proceedings over the statue. Richard Spencer, the known white supremacist, who you've probably heard of, is very active on Twitter, who is a self-described mentor to Stephen Miller, who is one of the White House advisors, got involved in it, and there was this idea of bringing together so-called alt-right groups, but it also included groups like the Klan, local white supremacist groups, all converging on Charlottesville today to protest the removal of that statue. Did my producer just tell me that Reverend Blackman is okay? Because she... Okay, we're trying to get her back on the phone. We're trying to get Reverend Blackman back on the phone. But what you're seeing there is Charlottesville, where you have these various white supremacist groups gathering today to defend that statue. Last night, there was an action, a counteraction planned. And this was essentially a meeting at a church on the campus of the University of Virginia, where counter-protesters who wanted to come out and oppose what you're seeing right here, oppose this white nationalist rally, they were meeting at the church to pray and to prepare themselves to counter-rally. rally. They were not actually holding a counter rally last night. They were just in church praying because they wanted to get themselves together, organize themselves, steel themselves to come out and face these white supremacist groups today. And instead, a group of hundreds, as described to me by Ms. Blackman last night, by Reverend Blackman last night to me on the phone, hundreds of torch-wielding white nationalist marchers, mostly men, converged on the church and then converged on the statue, chanting various slogans, including the Nazi slogan, blood and soil, chanting white lives matter, chanting you will not replace us, and then Jew will not replace us. All of those chants captured on various cell phone videos. So that is the scene right now in Charlottesville. As you can see, it looks a little chaotic. It looks a little calmer now. I believe. Okay, we're going to put on Andy Stepanek. He's on the phone with us now. He's a colleague of Reverend Blackman. Andy, can you tell us what's going on there right now?
So marching down Market Street is the National Socialist Movement, the neo-Nazis, the Traditionalist Workers' Party, which is the neo-fascist organization, and the Ku Klux Klan. They tried to enter the area of the park, and they assaulted clergy, they assaulted local peace activists, and they assaulted anti-fascist activists. They were using clubs, bats, and what appeared to be some sort of fortified gloves or brass knuckles.
Using brass knuckles, you said?
And like police shields.
And is there a police presence there? Because one thing I don't see is the kind of...
I have to say at this moment, I am disappointed in the state police. They are kenneled to the south of us on Market Street. They have essentially created a corridor for both sides to fight each other. I have not seen a police officer in the street for at least 15 minutes.
And can you tell about how many people, I mean, it looks like a very large crowd. About how many people would you estimate are there?
Inside the park itself, I can't give you a clear estimate, but between the counter-protesters and the people who are the fascists, I would say the fascist side has about 1,000. And the counter-protesters have between 5,000 and 6,000.
And your counter-protest now, is it fully sort of in the street right now? And are you in the your group in the same vicinity?
I can only speak for the groups that I'm affiliated with, and that is the Solidarity Seville organization, which is Black Lives Matter Charlotte chapter, which is an unofficial chapter. It is Showing Up for Racial Justice, which is a white ally organization, and it is the local clergy banded together in a group called Congregate Seville. And those three organizations made a coalition called Solidarity Seville. They organized some of the counter-protests today. Unfortunately, they were met with some pretty stiff violence from the neo-fascists.
And just described us, and we're talking for those who are just tuning in with Andrew Stepanian. He is one of the organizers of a counter-protest to a white nationalist convergence march of various white nationalist groups who had planned to converge on Charlottesville, Virginia, on the University of Virginia campus today to protest the removal of a statue of Robert E. Lee. So, Andrew, tell us a little bit about the organization that you lead and what it is you were trying to do, and set the scene for us where you're standing right now.
So I am standing on the south side of Market Street at the corner of Emancipation Park, where the Robert E. Lee Monument is located. For the past 2 hours or so, individuals have been filing into the park. Clergy have been holding prayer rallies outside, and anti-fascists have holding demonstrations. Approximately 15 minutes ago, members of the National Traditional Workers' Party, as well as the National Socialist Movement and the Ku Klux Klan were marching down Market Street towards the park and ran at the protesters with shields, bats, and clubs, as well as what appeared to be brass knuckles, and beat the protesters. So far, I have not seen police engage in any of this.
Okay. Can you just stay with us just for a second, Andrew? We have one of our reporters on the line. If you can just stay on the line for just a moment. I want to bring in Maya Rodriguez, who is a NBC News reporter. Maya, can you tell us where you're standing and what you're seeing?
Okay, well, right now we're basically at the intersection of Market Street and 2nd Northeast. This is basically the heart of the rally area. We're right at the corner near Emancipation Park, which, like I mentioned earlier today, it was previously renamed from Robert E. Lee Park. What we did see earlier was a confrontation between the alt-right folks who were out here protesting and some of the people that came in as counter-protesters. They basically met in the middle of the intersection. There was a skirmish. People began punching each other. There was some rushing of people around here. People came up against the barriers. We did not see the police move in at this point. They actually sort of held back. There was some yelling and screaming, and then at some point it seems to simmer down a little bit, but those crowds are beginning to reconverge in that exact same intersection once again. It's a very tense situation out here. You've been talking all morning about what happened last night. We are starting to see some of those emotions kind of come to the fore here. And we do, again, have lots of state police around. They are monitoring the situation right now. But again, tensions are very, very high right now at this rally.
And Maya, can you tell us, we're seeing people with these red and black flags. Do you have any idea what those flags are? What is the insignia that they are sporting there on those flags? What group is that?
You know, honestly, some of these flags are not marked. I cannot tell who they are with, whether they're counter-protesters or with the alt-right. In fact, a lot of people are sort of wearing very similar clothing. I mean, it just depends what. Let me take a look here.
Yep.
Some of these say white supremacy will die. That's what some of the red flags say. So these appear to be some of the counter-protesters here at this rally.
And if you could, so Maya, I'm going to go back to Andrew for a moment. If it's possible for you to pull aside anybody from the crowd that you could talk to so that we can get sort of well, hold on. What are we seeing there? This looks like some movement in front of us. We're just going to let that play out a little bit. Yeah, but we would love for you to talk. What are you seeing where you are, Andrew?
I am at the corner of 2nd Street and Market Street at the corner of the park in front of your setup here for MSNBC.
And so what we're seeing on screen from what I'm looking at is a group of people.
Sorry, I'm having a little trouble hearing you, but there is another skirmish happening as we speak.
There's another skirmish happening. Do you know what the black and red flags, what group that is? Can you tell us?
Yeah. I mean, it may be hard to discern in this moment, but some of the black and red flags are anarcho-syndicalists. They are actually anti-fascist. They are not with the alt-right. And the alt-right is aware of who they are, and they seem to be going after those individuals. So the anti-fascists are targets of the fascists.
Got it. So just for our viewers, just to reset, we're talking to Andrew Stepanian, who is one of the organizers of the counter-protest against this white nationalist, essentially neo-Nazis, Klan members of various groups, the so-called alt-right. Now we're looking at one of the skirmishes, and apparently these are skirmishes between members of these neo-Nazi and white nationalist groups and anti-fascist groups. So when you see the people with the black and red flags, they appear to be the anti-fascist groups.
Yeah,
these are actually live pictures right now.
They did not limit it to the anti-fascist organizations. They were hitting clergy as well.
They were also hitting clergy.
I think that was one of the most alarming parts. They were hitting individuals from the local clergy.
Wow. And
they were not engaged in any kind of raucous protest.
Right. Okay. So what we're seeing right now, everybody who's watching, these are live pictures from Charlottesville, Virginia. You're seeing clashes between white nationalist groups and counter-protesters. It doesn't appear that the police are taking much control of the situation. It's a little bit alarming. Do you see more police presence starting to gather, Andrew?
I'm sorry.
I'm wondering if you see more police where you are, because they don't seem to be getting a hold of the situation.
Yeah, so the police are actually on the south side of Market Street. They are the state troopers. They are not local police. And so far they have not entered the street area. It appears now from the south side on 2nd Avenue, there is a column of riot police, but they are also going into the stockades. They are not approaching the street.
I want to get back to Maya Rodriguez, our NBC News reporter. If you can just update us on what you're seeing where you are, please.
So I'm basically on the south side. I am with the state police on this side of the street. What we are seeing are a lot of people carrying signs. I hear drums going off in the distance. Now, the park itself is on a little bit of a rise from the rest of the street. That is where you see all of the people associated with the alt-right. You can see Confederate flags up there, these Nazi insignias, all kinds of things from this particular angle that I am at. They're actually in front of the Robert E. Lee statue as we speak. And they're sort of in a standoff, if you will, right now with the counter-protesters that are on this side of the street closer to where I am. I see signs that say Black Lives Matter, all kinds of stuff on this end. But now it looks like I'm seeing some people with Confederate flags kind of also bleeding into this crowd. So, again, the tension has ratcheted up here on this side of the street because it seems to be there is some bleed over coming between the folks that are in the park and the people that are out here in the street.
And if you could just explain, so there are people in the park. Was there an organized sort of permitted protest taking place in the park, and this is the spillover from that?
Correct. So there was a permit that was granted for Emancipation Park for the alt-right people to have their protests there. Now, the city of Charlottesville tried to get that permit changed to a different park that was much bigger in another part of town. It went all the way to federal court yesterday, and late last night, a federal judge handed down a decision saying no, the permit for the alt-right Unite the Right rally could still take place here at Emancipation Park. And of course, the folks with the Unite the Right rally were saying, you know, this is a victory for us that we're able to do this here, but this is a very small park in what is essentially downtown Charlottesville, which is why everyone is so crowded in here together, which may have been why the city of Charlottesville was so concerned about this rally in the first place.
And you said that there are state police there, not local police.
They are marked as state police. These are Virginia State Police that are here as well. They appear to be monitoring the situation at this point. They do not appear to have gotten involved in it. I do not see them out in the street, in the crowd where all this is happening.
And Maya, has there been any response to what we're seeing here, including violence that we've seen? According to Andrew Stepanian, who we spoke with, who's one of the activists, you had members of these white nationalist groups striking, punching clergy members, wearing brass knuckles, wielding bats. Where is the city leadership? Has there been any response from the mayor of Charlottesville? Has there been any response from the government?
I have not seen them out here at this point. They did have a press conference yesterday where they said that they would be ready for this rally. They had been planning for this for weeks, that they had a plan in place to handle this. We're going to see how that plan unfolds as the day goes on.
All right. Well, for those just tuning in, you are watching live pictures from Charlottesville, Virginia, a very large protest and counter-protest. White nationalist groups, various groups converging on the city of Charlottesville to protest the planned removal of a statue of Robert E. Lee from a park that is now called Emancipation Park. I've just been handed by my producers a list of who is down there marching in terms of the alt-right, so-called alt-right, the white nationalist groups. White rights activist Jason Kessler, who lives in Charlottesville, is apparently the organizer of this protest. That is the person who is organizing this rally. Kessler is a newly sworn-in member, according to Newsweek, of the Proud Boys alt-right fraternity, which was created by Vice News co-founder turned right-wing provocateur Gavin McInnes. Members are expected to attend the rally that you're seeing right now. You hear people chanting. I'm going to let you listen just for a second so we can see if we can hear what they're chanting. It's hard to hear it. So let's go on to the next person, Matthew Heimbach. Heimbach is described by the Southern Poverty Law Center as the face of a new generation of white nationalists. As a student at Towson University in Maryland, he founded and started a chapter of the Youth for Western Civilization, YWC, and the White Student Union is also apparently a part of the organizing effort for this supposed Unite the Right rally. You've got a guy named Mike Enoch Pinovich. Pinovich is an alt-right blogger and the host of the anti-Semitic podcast, The Daily Shoah, which refers to the Hebrew word for the Holocaust. A guy named Tim Gionette, who goes by Baked Alaska. That's a charming name. A former rapper, white rapper, and BuzzFeed social media strategist. Gionette went on the road with alt-right provocateur Milo Yiannopoulos in 2016 and has become a prominent alt-right troll, baiting opponents of Donald Trump with alt-right memes via his Twitter account. That's just some of the characters that you see there. We do have... Okay. All right, let's just to reset what we're talking about here. We're talking about a current rally by alt-right nationalists or by white nationalists in Charlottesville, Virginia. We've gotten back the Reverend Tracy Blackman. She's the executive minister of the United Church of Christ Justice and Witness Ministries in Charlottesville. Reverend Blackman, first of all, are you okay? We lost you earlier.
I am okay, Joy, but it's getting more volatile out here. They're beginning to throw things, and we are missing. We've lost contact with 3 of our ministers who had to run because nationalists, the white supremacists, began assaulting them. And so we've lost contact with Osagyefo Sekou and Cornel West and Seth Westaway. So we have people looking for them. and they're throwing, the white nationalists and white supremacists are throwing full bottles. It's beginning to be physical here.
And were you a witness to members of the clergy being struck by?
And now I'm being protected by the police. I may lose you again.
Okay.
Because they're throwing stuff even into this tent where the police are.
They're throwing things in the direction of police. I see it. We can see that now. We're looking now.
Nothing is sacred here, Joy.
Yeah, and do you feel? Go on.
This is a sad day in America, and I'm afraid that there will be many more because of the hateful rhetoric that we have unleashed in this country.
And who do you blame for what we're seeing right now?
I blame the present administration. I know that some may not agree with me, and I know that it didn't all come from him, but the language that promotes hatred against other race groups, the language that suggests that some people need more militarization of police than others, the language that says everyone does not have a place and is not welcome in America, has given permission for hate to be unleashed in this country. And may God have mercy on our souls for that.
And Reverend Blackman, when you say the present administration, do you mean the presidential administration, the Trump administration?
I absolutely do.
And I wonder if, now there is a bit of a police presence. You said you are being protected by the police. Do you feel that there were enough police deployed to this rally?
Well, it's interesting. The police are here, but for the most part, they've taken a passive observation type of stance and are only getting involved when there is a physical altercation. As someone who spent 2 years in Ferguson, it's certainly not my history with police in these kinds of situations. So I've also asked myself the question, where is all of the militarization and the mobilization that has happened in the past? It's not happening now. This is Charlottesville, that's Ferguson. Perhaps that is a part of it, but we certainly could use some of that strong handling of police that we saw against peaceful protesters in Ferguson that we are not seeing against white nationalists standing on steps, throwing full bottles, which is tantamount to a lethal weapon, onto those who disagree with them.
We're seeing another skirmish. For one moment, Reverend Blackman, we're seeing yet another skirmish.
We just located Steph and Cornell West.
Okay.
And Sekou, so they're safe as well.
That's good to know. So we're finding out that some clergy who were struck by members of these white supremacist groups, you can see there's another battle going on. One of the other guests that we had on earlier, Andrew Stepanian, said that some of what you're seeing are clashes between anti-fascist groups and groups of white nationalists.
I'm going to lose you because the police are requiring me to get out of here.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time, Reverend Blackman. All right, I think this might be a good opportunity to take a quick break. We'll take a very quick commercial break, and then when we come back, we will update you on the situation in Charlottesville. More AM Joy after the break.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.